What's up gamers, it's TreesapJake here with yet another video, and today's video is one that I've been requested to do for quite some time. It is a new up-to-date video about keybinds, and my keybinds specifically, and why I like them and what makes them so easy to press and so easy to use. So we're going to crack on with that one, but first I obviously wanted to say I'm very sorry for how slow I have been, or rather the lack of content in general. Real life is a bitch and it really does hit you quite hard, so I apologize for that. Obviously there will be more stuff coming out. Season 4 Shadowlands is awful. I don't like playing it. I only come on it sometimes, but at the minute I've been playing a lot of Wrath of the Lich King Classic, so there's going to be a lot of videos coming out for that. So I hope you enjoy that, but let's get started on my keybind video, and hopefully you find this useful. Okay guys, as you can see right now, I have made my UI massive, and the reason why I've made my UI massive is so that those of you who have a hard time seeing things can see exactly what I've put down there. So we're going to walk through. This is obviously my retail keybinds for PvP. So I'm going to go through and talk to you about a few different things and where I put things and what I have in my mind. So the first thing to do is I'm going to talk about 1, 2, 3, the bottom row here. The bottom row here, as you can see with my cursor here, the bottom row here, where I put the abilities that I think are the most important to me. The most important abilities for me go in that bottom row. These are the ones that are like my utility, the ones that I always try and use. For a lot of you, you can even hide it. You could probably take that little bar down here, throw it somewhere else, completely like turn it off with dominoes, and just it'll be totally hidden, and you probably won't need it because you know these keybinds. These are the keybinds that you know off by heart, that you don't really need to see if there's a cooldown for. Totally don't need them. So I'm going to go through what I do. So usually 1 to 5, I'll usually go up to 6. 1 to 6 is what I go through. That brings me about halfway through on the dominoes bar list. That's what I like to do. So for number 1, I'm always doing my main damaging ability. This would be sort of, you know, Scourge Strike on the DK, Lightning Bolt here, that sort of thing. My next important ability, my next staple is 2. So I've always done 1 Lightning Bolt, 2 Lava Burst. That's just what I've done for at least, like, you know, since Wrath. That's since Mop, since when I first started playing Shaman. That's just what I've done. That's what I've gone for. Earth Shock, this is another big ability. So abilities that are not as staple but are kind of like your builder spender, they go up towards number 3 and number 4. And number 4 tends to be my dot thing. So whether I'm using dots, I'll kind of put that on 4, or, you know, whatever works like that. It doesn't always have to be a thing, but the staple abilities go down there, and where you want to put them is up to you. That's what I've just done. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, very important. And then we start moving on to the kind of end of, you know, 5 and 6. Now 5 and 6 are harder buttons for me to press. They are harder buttons for me to press. So obviously, as an aside, I also use QU and QWE to move. This is my strafing. And then forward and back, I mean backwards, I don't really use S that much, but it's just in case. It's for other classes. But yeah, that is what I'm doing. Like Q and E and W is where I'm using. So pressing 1, 2, 3, 4 is really easy. 5 and 6 are harder. 5 and 6 are harder. And I've gotten used to it recently, but 5 and 6 is always hard. There, I put stuff that I don't really want to press all the time. So, for example, I put Lightning Shield. I also put Sky Fury Totem there. I've put Strangulate there on my DK. I've put other things like that. That's what I put on to 5. 6 tends to be a utility thing or a macro. So for example, here I've got Healing Stream Totem. I'll press 6, and that's something that comes up every 30 seconds. I'm not too fussed about it, you know. So it's nothing that I'm too worried about, but it helps me out. So things that I are more difficult to press, I don't put more important abilities on. I think that's key. Another thing I do, another important ability I put on is S1. So that's Shift 1, Shift 1. So the other end here are Shift macros, or rather Shift buttons. Shift 1, Shift 2, Shift 3, Shift 4, and then Shift R. That's kind of my mentality here. The other more important abilities are also very easy for me to press. Shift S1. So Shift 1, Shift 2, Shift 3, Shift 4, very easy. So Shift 1, usually it's like a big ability. So I think it's Apocalypse for my DK. For me here, it's Chain Lightning. So very important ability that I can use if I wanted to. Chain Lightning, Frost Shock, S2, that's my slow. S3, Earthbind, another long range slow. S4, Tremor, and then SR, so Shift R, is Lightning Lasso, which is again a very important ability. So Shift R tends to be another big ability. This can be a damage cooldown, a stun, whatever. I think Soul Reaper is on for my DK, but for Frost, it's the Dragon's Breath thing, that sort of thing. That's what I'm kind of going for. The big abilities I use, I put it on like important abilities that I don't, you know, I can't like randomly like, you know, button mash. You know, for example, if you put like a big ability on a 2 and you're kind of like, or even Q and W or something that's close to your fingers and you accidentally like do it and you, oh no, I've used my trinket or I used my wall. That's what happens there. So I don't ever make those mistakes. Those don't normally happen for me. Fat fingering stuff doesn't happen because I have them on a decent keybind. Shift R is what I do for lasso, but you can do that for anything. That could be your wall if you wanted to. That could be Stormkeeper if you wanted to do anything that's like a big ability. That's what I use. So that's that. That is my bottom row. That's it. That's really all I do. So the top row is for my F buttons. So F1 usually up to F8, but I go further in classic, but for here it go up to F8, and then we've got T, Shift B, Shift F8, and R. So these are, I'll get around to those. But talking about the F1 is always for me trinket. That is the easiest button for me to press. It's one that I can react to very quickly if I need to, and that's that. F2 has always been a utility button. So for example, this could be, you know, like on my boomkin, I'm fairly sure this is either Typhoon or it's a heal, so like rejuvenate, for example. For me on the Shaman, it's always purge. Purge is an easy button for me to press. I have a gaming mouse. I don't know if I can bring it up without breaking it, but as you can see, I've got a gaming mouse here. The buttons are on the side. This is incredibly easy for me to do. I've set them as F1, F2, F3, F4, F5, 6, all the way through. That's how they work for that. So I just instantly press that on the button, no problem. Same with F1. So, but if I wanted to do it on my keyboard, I actually can hit F1 and F2 really easily without kind of going for there, but I wouldn't do that. I'd always use a gaming mouse. Obviously, as an aside, buy gaming mouse. If you haven't, buy a gaming mouse. Sorry, an MMO mouse. Get an MMO mouse before you do any of this because it will make your life 9 million times easier. So anyway, that's the F button. So F1, F2. F3 I have used, at least in this expansion, as my Covenant ability. So here, Primordial Wave. This will be usually going forward anything that's a kind of like an ability that I think has an importance. So Primordial Wave is an important ability, so I put that there. F4 is always a heal. This is always my healing thing. So whatever your main heal is, Healing Surge, Regrowth, Sacrifice Pet, something like that. Usually that's what I use for F4. It's either F4 is a healing ability if I'm a hybrid class. If I'm not a hybrid class, it will usually be some sort of CC ability, and that's kind of what I do. So that's how I get used to them with my keybinds. F7 here and F6 for my Shaman has always been Fire Ellie and Earth Ellie. That's it. So I know they're the wrong way around, but that's just how I've gotten used to it, and that's just how it's kind of gone. F7 is the Fire Ellie, F6 is my Earth Ellie, and that's that. And that's what we kind of do. F8 again is another easy button to kind of press for me now, using my thumb. Very easy. So that's Echoing Shock. It's a middle button to press, very easy. That is another ability. Most of the time I'll use that as just a easy to press button for getting damage out, and this is a damaging ability, kind of like you would use Lightning Lasso. It's very hard for me to fat finger that F8 because it's obviously right at the back in the middle of the MMO mouse, so that's easy for me to press. But yeah, and so T, Shift B, Shift F8 and R. Now obviously this is like, what the hell's going on? This is so different, so random, but T tends to be something that I use, or at least as a keybind that I use as a means for like a stuns, that kind of thing. That's what I use. X, T, those are all of my sort of keybinds that I don't fat finger, that I can't just randomly do, that are easy to press with a shift or whatever, and I can just get the CC out, and that's kind of what happens. So T tends to be that one. Shift T I wouldn't press, so I don't really use it for things like, you know, Hex, for example, but T is just a standalone stun, like, you know, Leg Sweep, for example, Capped Stun. That's what I do, because Shift T is a different thing. But yeah, that's what I use for T. And then SB, utility, this is Spirit Walker's Grace. So Shift B is for that, easy one to press. A bit of a stretch if you've got small hands, but it works out for me, so I've got big hands, so I can Shift B. Again, I can't fat finger it. Shift F8, again, another thing I can't fat finger, very easy to press. Shift F8, and then R is basically a focus purge. So I use this, so I have F2 because I use Shift F2 for something else, but Shift, so F2 and R is my focus purge. So I don't really have to think too much about purging off something else from a healer. I have that focus and I press the focus purge macro. Obviously, if you want to do that for a different thing and you want to use Shift F2 for a focus purge whilst using purge, that's entirely up to you. This is just what I've gotten used to, and I find I am focus purging more than I'm main purging, so I tend to press, like, R is an easy button for me, so that's what I do. Also, it means that if I can't really fat finger Lightning Lasso on them as well, because I'm usually spamming R, and it's kind of, there's a global in between, so it doesn't really often happen. So it's quite good. That's quite a good thing. So at the top row, this is again more utility. As you can see, it's moving away from your base abilities to more utility. F is always movement thing. This is always like a ghost wolf, kind of like cheetah form, that kind of thing. That's kind of what I'm going for. That's a movement based ability. This could be Wraith Walk. This could be other bits that that you use. I don't know, like disengage, for example. This is what I use as a means of mobility. There's a mobility button, and it's there, and I know it, and it's just always been that on all classes. F9 is a bit of a weird one. F9 has been something that I've used for Healthstone. I try and use a Healthstone. I end up sometimes using Shift F1 for this as well on different classes. But F9 tends to be the sort of like, okay, yeah, I've got something that I can press here, like maybe like a port or Healthstones, for example, something that I'm not going to really need to use a lot, but it'll be something that I will remember, and I'll know that it's up because it's closer to my health bar and it's closer to my vision, so I know that when that's up. Shift C has always been a wall. I've pretty much used that on every single class. Shift C tends to be the wall. Sometimes I use V, but Shift C tends to be the wall that I've always used, especially if I've got two walls. So Shift C with the big one, V will be the other one. Shift F1, again, I've used this for Healthstones, but most of the time it's a shield kind of thing, a passive thing that you put on and you kind of forget. I don't remember to do it. Also, I don't want to press it too much because it's very close to my trinket, so I don't want to do that, so I won't really press that. This one here is a bit of a weird one. This is so I use a Swedish keyboard. That's another thing to say. I use a Swedish keyboard. This is a strange button that is... I suppose it's basically where, and you know, the top corner of your keyboard, that top corner bit, that's what that is, and that's where it is. And if you have an English keyboard or a European keyboard, that's what it is. The one between tab and 1, that is the button that I'm using. So just next to Q on those keyboards, that's what I'm pressing. So that is my damaging ability. That has always been a big damage ability. That is, you know, like Unholy Frenzy. That's Stormkeeper in this instance. That's your sort of like, you know, Incarn, all of that sort of thing. So that's kind of what we're doing there. Shift T tends to be a defensive, so any defensive, that is obviously Thunderstorm here for me. You know, for other people it'll be something else, but that tends to be a big defensive. X, now these are part of the ones that I always use for every single class. X is always what I use for CC, like spammable CC, Hex, Cyclone, Poly, all of that stuff. Always goes into X. That's just the same across all my classes. An easy button for me to press. Very hard for me to fat finger it, especially if it's like an instant thing, but it tends to be a spammable sort of thing that I use. Very easy to do, very easy to wear, and Shift X isn't hard to press either. So that's what I tend to do. G is my kick. So G is a kick, another easy one for me to press, easy around for me to run, or like, you know, hold down the mouse and press G. Very easy for me to press here. So G is what I use for kick, and that's across the board. So Shift G and G, focus kick, etc. Or if you want to make it Arena 1, 2, and 3, Arena 1 G, Arena 2 Shift G, Control G, that sort of thing. That's what I use. So they're very easy for me to press, and I don't have to think about it, and it makes sense logically in my head. V, again, I've used this for multiple different things. This is just a filler button, easy for me to press as well. I use it for Earthquake, I've used it for Barkskin, I use it for loads of other things, Vortex, that sort of stuff. Chains of Ice as well, I use it on my DK. So again, abilities that are sort of like, you know, easy to press, you don't really need to think about, it's there. Z, again, this is another one. This is one that I'm very used to pressing because obviously I use it for grounding. It's, again, another easy one for me to press. I use my third finger, really easy for me just to kind of press that there. So I never have any issues with that. I use it as Death of Decay for my DK, lots of different things. So it's just an easy button to press that is simple and does the job. And Shift S is the last one. That's what I always use for my second Covenant ability. I'm sure it'll change to something else in Dragonflight, but that's another easy one that I just press once and I don't have to think about again. The only thing that I really have S keybind for is the Shift S, and that's the easy one. I'd do that before anything else, and I don't tend to press it again. So guys, that is pretty much it in terms of my keybinds. There are a few other ones that I have. For example, F10 I use always for a sort of on-use trinket. It's very easy for me to press. It's kind of like, if I show you on my key, on my mouse here, Shift 10 is this one down here. Very easy for me to press and just get those on. I don't tend to forget it. The only thing is I don't see the cooldown here, but you know what, you don't need it. You kind of have an idea. And then Shift Z is for Primal Strike, but I don't always use it. It's just a button that I'll never press. I rarely ever press this button. Sometimes I will. Sometimes I'll press it for a reason, like to kill totems or stomp something, or just to keep a rogue in combat if he's pressed you know, a cloak, for example, that sort of thing. That's the sort of stuff that I would try and do with that. It's a very rare ability that you press. The other one I have is I have a few things that I have got hidden, and I'll show you. My DK I have a lot more. But if I kind of show you guys here, a lot of the stuff here, like for example, I have got Shift F for chain heal. I don't ever press this one. You'll probably never see me press this, but I do have it there. Shift F4. This is what I use often. You know, for this is normally, and for some reason it isn't. So we've actually figured out something here. This is what I usually use for something like Blood Fury. So Shift F4 is usually a racial. So Shift F4, easy to press. Very close to Control F4. Be careful. But I never normally have that issue. I've never done that to myself, so that's another one. Shift F2 is again a cleanse spirit. I use that for like a focus macro on a healer. So if I want to, you know, cleanse someone, then I can. And then Shift F3 finally is my mount up, and that, so I don't have to click anything. That is it. I just mount up, and that's that. But that's pretty much all my keybinds. I have some of them hidden. Obviously, my DK ones are a bit more, you know, extended. I'm happy to do one, talk about my DK one, how to set that all up as well to make it look the way that it does. So let me know in the comments below if that's something that you would like. Otherwise, guys, let me know what you think, if any of this was helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.